And again, he's still tormented. He doesn't know. I'm so confused. Like, Britney, I think you're really cool, but I don't know. And like, the L word's a really big deal to me. And I don't know Britney. And he talks like that too. He's just so annoying. Hi everyone, thank you for watching me here on I See Melanie. In today's video, we'll be talking about season 7 of Love is Blind, episodes 2 to about the halfway point of episode 5. So during this time, all the couples who have proposed to each other will have been established and we'll know who's moving on to the next round in Mexico. FYI, I watched episodes 2 through 6 yesterday in a binge right here in my den. My laptop is here. I've got my monitor over here. I'm watching this at 1.5 times speed because otherwise I don't know if binging this would have been bearable. And one thing I'll say is that all the couples basically say the same thing, all the successful ones. They say that when they talk to each other, they feel seen, they feel that they can communicate freely, that they're loved, that they're respected, and all those nice, warm and fuzzy different things. So I'll talk about each one of the couples and some particulars that they went through in their dates. Let's talk about the Monica and Steven pairing. So Monica is 36, she's in tech sales, and she said that she's always approached guys who are on the surface very attractive, very hot. And she's always been attracted to men who have, degrees and what she calls good jobs. We've got Steven, he's 33 years old, he's an electrician, and he's very big into communication, open and honest discussion. He's in therapy, so he's a guy who likes to talk. In Monica and Steven's date, Monica mentions that she feels secure enough in herself now to have a bad day. So to me, this implies that she's always been kind of a perfectionist. And Steven says that, it's okay to be imperfect and it's okay to have someone who can call you out on days when you're being imperfect, and that's totally fine. Steven is very forthcoming and he admits that in his previous relationship, he was an emotional cheater, so he slid into somebody's DMs, and now he's in therapy. He's working on that part of himself because he doesn't want to repeat the same mistakes in his future with his future wife. And Marissa says something to imply that she has been cheated on in the past, but she appreciates his candor and the fact that he took the steps to move forward and correct this. Now in this section, Steven reveals quite a lot. He reveals that in 2016, he voted for Trump and he regrets that decision. So I'm glad he feels that way now. And he voted for Biden in 2020. Steven also reveals that only a few years ago, he realized that his ancestry was not Italian like his family always told him, that he's actually partially Black. His family has lineage from West Africa. He said, I think his grandfather is 3/5 Black, which those fractions I find a little dubious, but whatever. He's partially Black. He himself is less than a quarter Black, but he took that information and he did research to find out more about his history. And Monica is Honduran and her father, I think she said, is African American. He's Black as well. And Steven referred to them as mutts, which I always hate when other people call other humans mutts, like mutts or dogs. Don't call another human a mutt, please. But okay. And yeah, in their subsequent meetings, they refer to each other as boyfriend and girlfriend. They're getting along really well. The communication's good. They talk about all that stuff. And eventually they propose, or Steven proposes. Monica accepts. She's very excited about it. And they have their reveal. And so I think when I was watching this, I got the impression, just based on the music they were playing and what they were saying, that Monica wouldn't find him attractive. But she found him attractive, said he was cute, said that he's not somebody who she would approach in other circumstances, but his personality and everything makes him more attractive. And they seem to have good chemistry together, so they're all set, for now at least. Let's go on to Ashley and Tyler. So from the first episode, I said I think that these guys are going to be a good match, and they are a good match. They have religion in common. They pray a lot together. Again, they feel safe, they feel secure, and all this kind of stuff. Ashley writes him a poem or a note saying basically how he makes her a better person. essentially, even though she's known him for a couple of weeks, but whatever. She feels very strongly about him. They feel good about each other. They were crying at the same time. Tyler proposed. Everything is good. They were very attracted to each other. I noticed that their kisses were a bit more chaste than the others, but that could be the religious thing, but whatever. They seem like a good match. They're almost a little too saccharine for me personally. But if it works for them, if they like it, I love it for them. And yeah, so they're going to Mexico too. On to the triangle of Marissa, Bowden, and Ramses. So Marissa is dating both of these guys. Let's start off with Bowden. So she and Bowden have something in common. They were both in the military. So that's a instant connection right there. And Bowden seems like a very nice guy. He reminds me a lot of Dr. Mike. I think they kind of look alike. Their voices sound the same, and they just have the same kind of energy. So who knows, maybe they're cousins. I have no idea. The two of them are both nerds. They like fantasy things. So they were talking about reading to their future children, all these fantasy novels. And yeah, they have a really good jokey rapport. They get along very, very well. Bowden, like Ramses, was married before. And we learned that he and Marissa have the same basic political leanings. They're both liberals. Marissa dated a Trumper before, but she's done with that era of her life. And yeah, so they got along pretty well, but she decided that she and Bowden had more of a friendship vibe, and she had more of a connection with Ramses. So obviously spoiling, they get together. But yeah, when you see them together, when you see them talking, they seem to get along very, very well. And Marissa is very high energy. She could be the type of person who would command attention in any room that she's in. And Ramses is a bit more subdued, a bit more introverted. And so we learn, yeah, he was married, he got divorced. Religion and his pull away from religion kind of added to that. And he surrounded himself with good friends, and they honed in healthy masculinity. He doesn't really believe in strict gender roles. So we said, when Marissa asked about, how would they divvy things up if they got married in terms of, household things like doing laundry and dishes. And he said they would both chip in equally. He doesn't believe that that's the wife's job. Obviously, it's whoever lives in the house's job. And Marissa, as somebody who's going into the law field, she will be spending a lot of time in the office, a lot of time working. So they said in terms of children, Ramses would be totally cool with taking a remote job so we can be at home to spend time with the children and maintain the household. As we talked about just now, Marissa was dating Bowden for a while, so it did take her some time to get to say I love you to Ramses and for her to decide. But she decided, and so they had their meeting, and Ramses was talking about how he was apprehensive about her not being attracted to him because he has a very unique look. His hair is very distinct. I've never seen that hairstyle ever in my life. But Marissa was instantly attracted to him. And I feel as though like their vibes really match. Like they both seem a little quirky, at least on the external. And she's the more bubbly one. He's more reserved. I wouldn't say he's like a shy person demeanor-wise, but I think that those energies work out very well. They have a good physical connection, a good chemistry, and they're off to Mexico. On to Taylor and Garrett. So Taylor still hasn't revealed her ethnicity, but that is okay. They keep on talking. They send flowers to each other. And at one point, Taylor sends Garrett a box of her grandparents' love letters to each other. And these are old-timey love letters, and so she is feeling the same sentiments that her grandparents felt, which I thought, I don't know, again, I know this is a reality TV show and they're dating through an opaque wall, but the level of intimacy that she implies by sharing her grandparents' love letters to this guy, I thought was like, wow. If she feels that way, she feels that way. But I thought that was a bit much, but if it works for them, it works for them. They talk about kids and the timeline. Taylor mentions that she wants to have kids in about 7 years, and Garrett wants to move it up maybe 3 years, I think he said. And so she said she's willing to compromise on that because she feels secure in her love for Garrett, and she doesn't feel as though having kids earlier would take away from herself in her career and as a woman and all that kind of stuff, because Garrett is excellent and she would want to have babies sooner. Garrett proposes, she accepts, She cries, I think. To be honest, I think all of them cry when they get proposed to, I think, or most of them. And they have their meeting, and he sees her. I think they're the first reveal, actually. And like, she looks great, obviously, and he's very attracted to her. And their chemistry together was much better or more than it was in the dates to me. And that, that makes sense because they're actually seeing each other. But I always thought that they were kind of like a little boring, to be honest, when they were in the dates. But they seem to have a better connection in person, which is, I guess, that's a good thing. Okay, so I talked about the good couples first, or the couples that I have the most confidence in first, because I'm going to talk about the ones where I think things were a little messy. So let's talk about Alex and Tim first. So they're talking about their upbringing and how they both have religious backgrounds. I'm guessing Tim is some sort of Christian, and Alex's family was part of the Nation of Islam, and they talk about how, that shaped their upbringing. Tim again mentions his sisters, and he mentioned that one in particular died from lupus. And this is very emotionally evocative for both of them. I'm pretty sure they end up crying at some points. And then later on in a different date, Tim gives Alex a bracelet. It's a bracelet that one sister gifted to the other. And that was a symbol to show, like, I'm entrusting you with this very precious artifact of mine. And she was very touched by it. And I thought that was nice, but I will also, let's say, I feel as though, again, kind of going back to the Garrett and Taylor thing, that these gifts are kind of manufacturing a forced level of intimacy between these people. Again, I haven't seen every one of their interactions, so I don't know exactly what went down. But I don't know, to give the stranger that you've never met before, like in person at least, something so valuable to your family. Like, I'm sure his parents would love to hold on to the sisters' gifts to each other. But yeah, he feels confident enough to give it to her. And he writes her a note, and he basically says in it that Alex will be the person to give his parents a new daughter, a new granddaughter. And again, it's a lot of pulling in the family and all these emotions, which I don't know, to me, it almost seems a little bit manipulative in a way. I don't know. Again, if this works for these people, it's fine. But I took that away from this. And so they propose to each other. She says, when he says, will you marry me? She says, duh. She's kind of like sarcastic, but then she says yes, properly. And they meet, and she's anxious because, she's a thicker girl. She doesn't know what his type is. But he's instantly attracted to her too. And so they're talking, they're kissing and stuff. And he mentions the word dog a lot. And she doesn't like it. And he mentions it over and over again. And they're like, they're just freshly meeting each other. And so one point she's like, oh, stop it. Stop saying dog. And then she gets up. She kind of walks away a little bit. And she sits back down. And he says it again. And now you see she's a little irritated. So I don't know. I feel as though he almost said that to get under her skin a little bit. And also is revealing his personality. If he says the word dog a lot, then he says the word dog a lot. But yeah, I noted that. So now let's get to the mess. That is the coupling of Nick and Hannah, Hannah and Leo and Britney. Disasters. This love square is a mess. I was very surprised to see Nick and Hannah together once again. Hannah brought him back and said that she was sorry for cutting him off, but she listened to the ladies in the women's quarters and they kind of convinced her to not see him, and he was not impressed by that. And he said he was very hurt by it. And she said she cut him off because she thought that he was going to hurt her, so she preemptively broke up with him so he wouldn't have the chance. And he said, I would never do that to you. I really like you. And then later on, she talks about, things that kind of bothered her. Again, all the talk about the physical appearance. And she mentioned how, as a kid, weight was always an issue for her. Her mother hid away snacks and put like a padlock, I think, on the cupboard that had the little Debbie's and stuff like that. And how in the pandemic, like me, she gained a lot of weight that she subsequently lost. And so him talking about looks all the time made her feel as though that was the most important thing to him. But he mentioned, it's all about how he makes her feel and the vibes and all that kind of stuff, and that looks don't matter. Now they talk about the job situation because he wanted to be in the NFL, but now he's a real estate agent. Obviously, he wished he could be a football player, but he knows that that was a pipe dream and he's enjoying real estate now. And it's going to take some time for him to ramp up to get to that level where he's making a good amount of money, but he's confident in his path. And she mentions, well, I quit my job to be here, so I need to make sure that you're financially stable, which again, I always wonder how people take time to be on these type of reality shows if they take vacation or if they take a leave of absence or whatnot. But the very fact that she just full on quit her job to be here, I think says a lot about her. And Hannah is not my favorite person, to be honest. Hannah is divided, so she's still talking to Leo. Leo and Hannah are still a thing, so they have a date. And of course, because it's Leo, the topic is going to be centered around dollar bills. He asks her what she thinks about prenups, and she says she's totally fine with prenups. And to be honest, to be fair to Leo in this case, like I believe in prenups as well. There's nothing wrong with that, but of course it's Leo, like that's all he talks about is money. They're talking about things, and she mentioned something that I clocked in the last video that I did in episode 1, that she does have insecurities, but her insecurities are more on the external and not the internal. She's okay with being, overconfident about herself, but the external. And so she mentions the food situation, the weight gain things. And he says, like, Leo, you're lying. But he says, oh, I don't care if you were 500 pounds, I would still be into you. It's like, Leo, you wouldn't be. You're very superficial. Why are you saying that? Now Leo has a date with Britney, and he says that she has been elevated to the #1 position in his heart. And he says to her, which I think is so friggin' rude, people probably think you're pretty dumb because of your voice. And I said to myself, you obviously think that. But he kind of guises it by saying, well, you can use it as a superpower because you come across as dumb, but you can really be smart and you can be underhanded and all that kind of stuff. It's like, who do you think you are? I thought that such a condescending thing to say to somebody. And then he goes on about how he's so torn because he really likes her, but there's somebody else. And they both look tormented in this conversation. They go on another date. Leo is still stringing her along. He says, I really love you. He's like gassing her up, giving her all these compliments. She's like, stop with the compliments. You need to figure out what you want. I do not want to be strung along. And again, he's tormented. They have another date, and Leo was asking her what style of ring would she want. And she says, well, are you asking this to me and the other woman? Because what kind of a question is that? And again, he's still tormented. He doesn't know. I'm so confused. Like, Britney, I think you're really cool, but I don't know. And the L word's a really big deal to me. And I don't know Britney. And he talks like that too. He's just so annoying. Britney tells him rightfully is that I don't like this. Why is it taking you so long to figure out who you want to be with? And he says, well, I guess, it's not really a good foundation to start off so questionable as to how much I love you versus how much I love this other person. She's like, yeah. And then they leave the meeting, the date, and they both look tormented. And you see this. You see how when Britney leaves the room, she picks up her plate and she takes it with her. Leo leaves his plate there on the floor because Leo has been gifted with a lot of money, a lot of good fortune from his family, but they didn't gift him with good home training. When Hannah meets up with Leo, she tells him that she's engaged to Nick and that they're going to have to break up, obviously. And Leo does not take kindly to this, to say the least. He browbeats her, he berates her, he guilt trips her about not choosing him, makes her feel bad, makes her feel stupid for choosing this guy who apparently he says it's her second choice. And why is she doing this to him? He goes in, and it's so bad that she ends up crying. And again, I don't really care for Hannah, but that was totally uncalled for. He had no reason to say all that to her.
Is he the best person for you, or is he just the first person to tell you I love you? Because if he's just the first, and that's how you're gonna get married,
And the way he was getting so animated, he seems like the type of guy who, I don't know if this is the case, but he could get violent if things don't go his way. And he was being pretty verbally abusive to her. And so she leaves the place. She's in tears. She goes back to the women's quarters and she tells Britney what happened. And this is obviously bad. And then later on, she goes back and she meets up with him and she says, no, we're not doing this anymore. I'm going to be with Nick. You're not a good match. He says, yeah, we're not compatible. And then at that point, he's like kind of trying to save face. So he's like, you know what? After we left, I realized that Britney is a woman for me. And like, yeah, we weren't a good match anyway. So I'm going to go with Britney. And then he says to her, when you go back to the quarters, tell her that this was a mutual breakup, not that Hannah chose to break up with him. So it looks better to Britney. It's like, you were a little weasel too. Like, honestly, I don't know why this Leo guy chose to do this on Netflix, where everyone would see how terrible and how little integrity he has. And he's supposed to be some high-flying art dealer. Like, I would never buy, well, I don't really buy art, but like, I would never buy art from somebody like him. He's terrible anyway. So yeah, so they break up, and Hannah goes and she tells Britney, yeah, he told me to lie to you and say that this was a mutual thing. So she can see that he, as Hannah says, is a con man. I should also mention, when Hannah and Nick meet up, Hannah is a little surprised by Nick's stature. She thought he'd be a bigger guy because he said he was a football player, but she still thinks he's cute. She's still shorter than him, which she's happy about, and he's happy about too. And yeah, they're going to Mexico. But guess who's not going to Mexico? Britney and Leo. So they meet up once again, and Leo is wearing this chain over his shirt. And the first thing I thought to myself was, is he trying to be Kendall Roy right now? Both spoiled rich guys. Anyway, so Britney is not very happy. She feels as though their connection is tainted because she knows all the stuff that went on with Hannah. But he continues to say, I love you, know we're a good connection, I'm gonna keep on complimenting you. Then he says like, oh, I know you like hearing it, the compliments. Like, what is wrong with you? It really bothered me. That's where it cut off and the next episode picked up, and Britney says, yeah, she does like it. And he proposes to her and she accepts. He says, I love you. She says she doesn't feel comfortable saying it yet, which I think is always a red flag. And then they meet up. And he's very attracted to her. He's all over her. I think she's attracted to him too. But she still hasn't said, I love you. She still doesn't feel comfortable saying, I love you. Even when they were kissing and like, he was like hugging up on her, she looked as though she was pulling back, like she was grossed out by this guy. And I can understand why. And Britney mentions in the confessional that she thinks it's wild that she's engaged to this guy who she doesn't know, and their foundation is so shaky. It turns out they decide to go to a trip to Miami, and they break off their engagement a few weeks later. So they're out of the show, at least for now. So Leo was gone, so we're no longer going to be annoyed by him. We won't hear about his money anymore. So yeah, so I would say that the couples that I feel most confident in, I think Tyler and Ashley, I think I will always feel comfortable in, or confident in, at least for now. Marissa and Ramses, I think they're good. Taylor and Garrett, I think they're like kind of medium. And I would also say the same thing for Monica and Steven. Hannah and Nick, I do not think so. I don't like Hannah. I think that's probably what's tainting my impression. But anyway, I have another episode to talk about, episode 6. So make sure you watch it right after this. They're going to be uploaded at the same time. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you later to talk about Love is Blind. Okay, bye everyone.